uniting the right, basically. Uniting conservatives, uniting Republicans, uniting people who are just anywhere center-right, wherever you are there. And I just as we were just talking about, like, what does that look like? There's so many different groups, and we touched on it a couple podcasts ago with specifically Black Americans, but there's libertarians and there's other groups within the conservative movement that, we all agree on the policy, but we don't necessarily, there's something keeping us, there's wedges that keep us apart that disunite us, for lack of a better word. And so we're just trying to explore what those could be. I think one of the easiest ones is libertarians. For the most part, it's kind of ambiguous because you could be kind of more left in one respect and more right in other respects. But I think a good definition for a libertarian is someone who is socially liberal but like fiscally conservative, legally conservative. They believe in the Constitution for the most part.
And even you saying that, why hasn't the Conservative Party or the Republican Party just sacrificed? Sacrifice is a strong word because sacrifice means that you're giving up something. But in reality, the Conservative Party would not be giving up anything to conform to those beliefs. Not even to conform, but to not rebel against directly.
Yeah, and go ahead, sorry.
No, but it's like there's so much to gain.
Victory.
Yeah, there's so much to gain with that second approach, with the latter approach. It's hard to see, why they wouldn't change or why they wouldn't adapt.
Yeah, like you said, if you're sacrificing something, if you're not, it's like you're going to get rid of something, but what do you get out of it? At the end of the day, we all agree on the same policy, and that's what we want.
Yeah.
So is it worth me?
It's fighting a losing battle. This day and age, people like you say, being socially liberal, people, and especially as the generations go on, like people are going to let people do what they want to do to a certain extent. And I think what the Conservative Party and what the Republican Party should be focused on is drawing that line and saying, this is what we'll accept as being socially, liberal before it gets like completely, janky. And then it's like you're so far down the rabbit hole. But if they would have come to a good standard with the Democratic Party, there wouldn't be weird stuff happening at schools where there's, transgender people doing like,
getting kids involved with that.
Yeah, just what I mean, like basically stripping at school. Yeah. Would you hire a regular straight woman to strip at school? No, be honest.
No,
it just doesn't make any sense. So why would you change your standard to? Why would you change your standard just to prove that you're different?
Yeah, like
you know what I mean? Yeah. Like a school wouldn't allow just a regular, they call it sex worker now, or I don't know if they would call that to say a stripper or something like that. They wouldn't allow that. Entertainment. They wouldn't. And male entertainer, you could say, but even females could be entertained.
People because now
you don't know what to say. That's why I try to phrase it like that.
Yeah.
But just leading up to the point, it's where. If you wouldn't allow that normally, just for a normal woman to come in and do like a drag show is what they call it. So why would you allow somebody who's, LGBTQ, right?
Yeah, it's got a lot of parallels to, and when I look at drag, I see it's making a mockery of what a woman is. You have a man dressed as a woman and taking a mockery of it. To me, it's the same thing as blackface. It's like you're making a mockery of of something. Then it's like. How do you reconcile those two things? Like drag queens are okay, blackface is not.
Yeah,
and it's, not that I don't think anyone on the right is having these issues. I think.
No, and that's good. That's a good even topic because I wasn't even thinking of it like that. I'm glad that you mentioned that because I wasn't even thinking of that like that.
But it's just I mean, the left right now is, I feel like if you get beyond the slogans and you get beyond some of the hyperbolic rhetoric and you get beyond Trump, which is, what they're really focused on.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can have kind of political Islam, transgender stuff, gay, lesbian rights, Black American interests. All of these things do not work together. They don't fit. It's fitting a square piece into a round hole. Like, it doesn't work.
And so what the Democratic Party has done is painted itself as the complete opposite to the Republican Party. So it's in the same way as, since the Republican Party was seen as, and even for a while you could say they were directly so against the LGBT community, that they gave them so much power in this day and age that they can do that. They can basically get away with anything, almost. And I think that's one of the issues when you suppress a movement, when you suppress something. And even if it's not you intentionally trying to bring somebody down, but you just agreeing with them or disagreeing with them is enough to give them a lot of power in the future. I think we've seen this across the board. Cancel culture, rape accusation culture.
Oh God, yeah.
So there's a lot of things down. Now, doesn't mean that in the past something, doesn't mean they're lying. Doesn't mean in the past that these situations may have been neglected. But since they were neglected, maybe even a small fraction of them, now it's
so far the other way.
It's so far the other way. It's like, it's insane.
Yeah, I think, especially with those issues, for one thing, going to the trans issue specifically, it's like you're dealing with such a small segment of the population. There's, hi there.
Hey.
You don't mind if we're recording? If you don't I'm not saying you have to leave or anything, but if you just don't want us talking.
How long are y'all gonna be?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably. It's a podcast, so probably 40 more minutes, 30.
No, it's fine.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, don't be. It's okay. No worries. Thanks for telling me, though.
Of course.
Have a good day.
You too. Have a good night.
All right, what was I saying? Actually, I'm just thinking about it. She probably would want to leave because we could get in trouble.
Yeah.
For talking about
So
stuff.
talking about what we were talking
Oh,
about.
man.
And that's the craziest part. Because we're not having a discussion that's by any means inappropriate.
Yeah.
And by any means out of whack.
Yeah, but this is actually the perfect. I'm going to leave this in here. Actually,
Yeah, you
because
should leave it in there.
This is the reason we even have to have a lot of these conversations, because that we're not here. We don't hate anybody.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be provocative or insult someone or challenge someone's experience. We're not doing any of that stuff.
Yeah.
We're just actually trying to figure some of this stuff out.
Exactly. And I think people don't give people enough leeway. It's honestly, nobody has all the answers. Everyone is trying to figure out the world based on their experiences. And so I think people have been really harsh in thinking that people should have the right answer, or even thinking that their answer is right.
Yeah. Or and that's the thing, feelings. You're
Yeah.
talking about thinking my answer is right. That's
That's
feelings.
your thinking is.
So if we're if we
Yeah.
were staying here, we were anyway, back to the tranny stuff,
Yeah.
and then that could get us in trouble. It's not that we're saying anything bad about it, but we're just saying
It's like they're off topic; they can't be mentioned.
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
that's a huge issue.
With the right, I should say wrong person. The person who comes in here and says, "Oh, you guys are talking about this." If it's not, if you're you can talk about the transgender stuff, but it has to be this type of conversation.
Yeah, it has to be exactly.
It has to toe this line. You're going to do this dance, do this skip. And if it's not that, then all of a sudden now it's a problem.
Yeah.
And now you need to be silenced.
In
or whatever.
any way, with any topic, even talking about race, anything, when you start having people having a tiptoe, then they become fake. And you just don't know.
Yeah. And then
what their intentions
and
are,
now,
anything.
What's funny about that is I think that when you start denying people free speech like that,
Mm-hmm.
you create marginalized people.
Yeah.
And so, and it's funny because on online and everything, and guys, you hear the mantra that white supremacy like isn't a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And by the numbers, it's there, but it's not like, oh my god, like it's not the end of the world as far as I'm concerned. But and I haven't really seen it in my life. I recently, the last couple of weeks, this I guess this Nick Fuentes guy, I'm not sure who he is. He's, I guess, a thought leader in what's called the TradCons, traditional conservatives. These are the guys going up to Charlie Kirk and saying, like, how does gay sex get us, help us win the culture wars or something like that. You don't seem like you're familiar with this.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
This is like one of the things that
That's so crazy because it's like, at the end of the day, it does not affect you, and nothing's going to change. We're not. It's not being reversed. Gay marriage is never going to be reversed in this country.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Just don't. There's nothing to fight against. Only thing you can do is set the standard and say, you know what? It's not the state's decision, or it's not a federal decision. Before they get so much power that they're forcing churches to have to marry.
Well,
That's the issue.
Yeah,
so
that's
I think
far.
that's when it's going to go too far, and it could be even heading in that direction because you see it happening with businesses. So what's next, right? But when you start talking about rhetoric like that, it just becomes out of whack. Because if it's from a Christian standpoint, then you better start attacking adulterers, and there's a lot of them. Across boards.
Well, that was always the...
Like, you got to pick your fight.
Yeah, I thought that was always the problem with conservatives that like kind of, well, I guess they were talking about it in the first place because it was kind of on the political forefront. It wasn't like, the left was bringing out, they weren't, that was kind of the political argument. They weren't talking about the other things. And like, traditionally, I think, from what I've seen anyway, the left brings up issues and the right responds. The left, it's never like the opposite. It's never like the right has some kind of proposal. It's always kind of us responding to what they're doing and saying and everything. And that's the whole.
That's a losing game.
Yeah, they're like it or not, they have good strategies. They have good tactics. And I'm just trying to see, we've kind of get a little bit in the weeds now, but good weeds.
No, this is good.
But what. Like we talked about all these different groups, just mentioning, there's these TPUSA guys. You have this Nick Fuentes group where I guess I need to know more about.
I'm going to research them after this and see what they're about.
There's other guys too. I mean, there's classic guys. There's like the Gavin McGinnises, there's the Milo Yiannopoulos, the Ben Shapiros, the Steven Crowders, like, Mark Levin. I mean, old school guys, new school guys over here, guys over there. And I'm just like, all of us, at least the guys that I'm aware of, all these guys agree on the same policy, but they have these little feuds with each other about, oh, well, he said this and this, it's like, and I'm like, what is it going to take to, like...
You know what? I think I was reading, it was on Instagram today, it was a quote from Ray Dalio, and it said, it was talking about how being a perfectionist is actually the worst thing to be, because you focus on too many details that really don't matter. And I think that's where the conservative party is like, you have to be this conservative and this. It's so controlling. I think that's become the issue, is that as much as the Republicans say Democrats want everybody to conform, the same thing about conservatives. They want everybody to conform to their specific ideals. Exactly what they believe, and if you say something a little cross, or if you deviate from the standard a little bit, it's not good, or something like that.
I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, that conservative, and that's because we actually are kind of like free thinking. We are individuals. We have no problem, standing up for what we believe in, and putting ourselves in, well, these are my values, and people come to us, or people come together by virtue of those set of ideas or policies or whatever. And the left doesn't do that. They will throw that in the trash and just say, you know what, yeah, wherever the group goes, I
Yeah,
go.
wherever the group goes, you go, and that obviously is just wrong in so many ways because the group is usually wrong.
Yeah, groupthink is never a good thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's how they maintain power, and it comes at a great cost. But I mean, they are very. I mean, even right now, I mean, I think is who's the guy who said it that I'm only 1/2 of 1/3 of the government, or was that Mitch McConnell or something talking about under Obama? And they were the Republicans. I think they had the House or the Senate. I can't remember, but they were like, fight, like you fight, do something. And he goes, I'm 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. I don't have a lot of power. Look what the Democrats are doing right now.
Yeah.
We have the presidency. We have,
So it's different
they're
because
making his life hell.
this type of tactic was unheard of. I don't think
By
we
Democrats or
just
like the whole
attack on our president. Like, I don't think that's ever happened in quite a. I'm not sure.
I remember, and I wasn't paying attention. Like, well, I mean, I remember it, but not. I wasn't paying attention as like I do now. But I mean, I remember they were calling Bush Hitler. They were saying he was. They still say he's a war criminal.
Yeah, I mean, Bush got some heat, but nothing like this.
I mean, Trump
this
definitely has it worse.
This
No
is
doubt about
this
it.
is really like you could watch the news and not hear about Bush for I think quite frequently.
Yeah.
You cannot watch the news and not hear about Trump.
Nope.
There's no way it's possible. And so
No, you're right. Trump is. Yeah. No, Trump has it way worse.
yeah, I think when you open up, it's Pandora's box. Because what's going to happen to the next president? If he's a Democrat, the Republicans are not going to hold anything back anymore.
Do they have the spine for it, though? You think? Do you think they'll
Absolutely.
Do you think they'll like just make up some not crime? And I mean, because now you have to assume that there's a thing
That's
called
true.
the deep state. They don't have
That
the
is
deep
true.
state on their side. The deep state is. I mean, it's a real thing. Whether I mean, it's to anyone out there who doesn't think there's a deep state, ask yourself how the most powerful man, arguably, in the United States, maybe the world, his own government has been coming after him for over 4 years now. I mean, now I guess just today, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to try to impeach him. I mean, good luck with that. But nevertheless, Adam Schiff is getting people's phone calls and records. How'd you get those? There's like it's a big deal. Like,
Yeah.
You can't just get people's private information like that. You need probable cause. There's evidence, standards of evidence you need.
See, that's the thing is I think we've known for a while, the American people, that there's so many different government entities and they all have access. And who knows who he gets it from? Was it FBI? Is it the CIA? Is it the NSA? Is it like there's so many different organizations, I think, and this isn't one thing, another thing I agree with, being conservative about is like things need to be condensed. There's way too many people with way too much power.
Yeah, unelected people. We don't know who they are. We
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they're spending money on.
And
I mean, it's insane.
it's just there's too many things in the dark, and I guess that's what the deep state is. It's like
yeah, it's executive branch agencies
Yeah.
that are they have no oversight. The
No
president
oversight.
can't do anything about it, evidently. I don't know. If I were President Trump, I mean, people would tell. I mean, I'd probably be impeached immediately because I would literally. Because I'm sure these guys say like they probably have these protections and Congress granted. I go no. I'm the president. I'm the head of you. I'm your boss. Out of here. Yeah, I would be tearing these agencies apart. And probably that's why I'd probably end up like Jeffrey Epstein.
yeah, or JFK.
Oh yeah, oh god, in public.
Yeah.
Just driving around. Hey, who's gonna get me? I got cameras on me. No.
Nobody's untouchable. But I think Trump, when he gets reelected, is going to show a different side.
You think?
Because at that point, he has nothing to lose. He has his 4 years. It's locked in. You can't get another 4. What do you have to lose? And
That's true.
I think that's Trump's mentality. It's like, listen, I'm not going to let them know I'm soft, but I'm not going to go full force yet. Because if he does, there's chances are he might not be reelected.
Yeah, he's got advisors telling him to be a little bit in this or that. Where I don't know. I just think just be honest, man. I think people resonate with that. I think even secret, like sure, like in the group think people, oh he sucks, but I'm sure with some people you just look at it. If he's like genuine, like hey, this is what I believe, this is what I'm going to do, and he actually does it.
And that's what he's done for the most part. But I think as of right now, there's so much against him, and there's so much. There's just so much bad press. There's so much negativity. There's no reason to go. Ape is the correct word. There's no reason to, fully go and target the deep state and do all of that just yet.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I remember listening to Dan Bongino early on, and he had some speculation. I'll say I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he kind of proposed this idea that maybe like when Jeff Sessions was there, they were doing some kind of like not undercover stuff, but they would they had a problem with leaks. I think they still have a problem with leaks. And they said, and then all of a sudden he's looking at this and saying, oh, well, hey, he told this agency this agency that, and this agency this. And then in like the New York Times, this date came back. And it's like, this is like a tactic that we've used to like find leakers in the past. And he gave an example of, I think maybe in Serpico, where they might have done something like that, or some movie where they did that. We're going to raid this day. And so, whoever we're going to tell the DEA guys this, FBI this. So that way the leak is coming from this office. All right, so now we're going to look at DEA because they, we told them this date. And apparently he was saying that some of that stuff was going on from when he could tell from other kind of news reports. And by New York Times gave out this date. All right, let's go to there. Whoever you told that information to, that's probably where your leak is coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea.
They haven't moved on that yet, though.
Exactly. It's not the time to move. Now is the time to continue. Let yourself be attacked. That's
that's
it.
Gonna happen
it's a good defense is sometimes you just let yourself be bombarded, and then you go to a full-fledged attack. Because you know what? You know who's going to be tired next year? Or for the next 4 years? Democrats. You think they're going to have another 4 years to deal with an onslaught after they just delivered an onslaught? No way.
I don't know. I think they will.
You think so? I don't think so. I think it's going to wipe a lot of them out. I think Pelosi is going to be wiped out. A lot of these newcomers who have so much enthusiasm, they haven't been attacked. And it's a difference. You can do a lot of attacking, and that's what the left does. They do a lot of attacking. But when they're on the defense, they're not good. Like, look at how some of these candidates hold up with just minor attacks.
Yeah, they don't take kindly to...
But they're attacking all the time, whether it's Booker or Harris or Biden or Sanders or Warren. That's literally the Democratic playbook.
Yeah, they don't really... I mean... To the extent they talk about policies at all, it's crazy things like free health care.
Yeah, and just...
what was the latest one I heard from Warren? She wants to extend school hours, something like that. She wants to...
I'm in favor of extending school hours.
To like 6 p.m.?
That's ridiculous. But I'm definitely in favor of extending school hours. And even making... some sort of extracurricular activity standard.
Oh,
they do this in Japan, where it's like you have to join a club. Like you have to find some way to be involved outside of your academics. And what this does is it gives parents and obviously who are working the opportunity. They don't have to pay for babysitters. There can be, they know their kids are in a good place, in a safe place.
Streets.
Yeah. I mean, the streets of Japan, regardless, right? Who knows what Japan could have been without that, though? Without, that sort of schedule. And I think it's good. I think it gets kids to be social. And that's one of the main issues, is that a lot of kids from this generation, they're not having the communication skills they need just to, to have a good existence, to live life. Communication is probably one of the most important things you can, hope to accomplish. And if you don't have that skill, or you're afraid to communicate with other people, obviously something's lacking. And so No, I'm in favor of longer school days, 100%.
But not like, yeah, okay. So I thought you meant
6
like,
o'clock is a little ridiculous, but I think, and even in certain schools, I don't know how this would fare in America, but I know in Japan what they do is after the school day, the students will clean the school. They go around, they clean the grounds, and then they go to their club. So schools don't pay for janitors, and
kids probably don't make messes.
exactly it teaches them respect. And that's something that's actually lacking. There's such a lack of respect, I think, across race, across economics. There's a lack of respect, and something like that starts at a young age. Everybody's cleaning up after you. Don't have to take responsibility. You do what you want. You litter on the street. You drop stuff at school. Somebody's going to clean it up for you, right? Your parents are cleaning it up for you. Somebody's going to clean it up for you.
Yeah. This is that, well, I guess really the new argument that I'm seeing is that for a long time we always talked about rights but not responsibility. And you can't have one without the other. We certainly can't have, you can't have responsibilities without rights. If you don't have the right to do anything, you're not responsible for anything. So there are things that you need to have them together. But I want to kind of bring us back to the topic.
Yeah,
kind of in the weeds, which is always good. I always enjoy the conversation with you.
Yeah.
What would be, so like, going back to like libertarian party, let's say, what do you think the current message is that we send, like, oh, I'm a conservative and you're a libertarian, and that's like what divides us, and what message do you think we could send to like the libertarian HQ to say, hey, listen, we should actually join forces? What would your message be?
I don't know if there's a particular message. I would have to really understand why they're separating. If it's just socially, it really doesn't make sense. Maybe they just like the name better. Because if it's just
if it's that petty,
yeah, if it's that petty, if it's just that, then it really doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I can get what they could be doing is trying to sway unaffiliates to another party.
Yeah, I mean,
Which is, and I don't want to interrupt you, but which is what the Democratic Party did with the Working Families Party. They were able to not only take some Democrats and put them in a little faction, and I believe, I don't know what race it was. It was a governor race, but the governor in this state won because of Working Families votes. That pushed them over. So it could be the same thing, with the Libertarian Party, and it could have that same impact in getting people who maybe don't want to join the party, or maybe don't want to vote because they don't believe in anything. Maybe they want to be a libertarian. I think it does have that approach. However, again, if it's just because it's socially, then you're better off, I think, trying to change the party. And that's kind of how I feel. I'm pretty socially liberal for the most part. So it's not enough to change. I think people they get caught up on the specifics. Like I said, they get caught up in the details. But it's not enough for me to make me switch to libertarian or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I were to have like a bunch of like high-level libertarians, I would just be like, I don't understand what the difference is between you and like a constitutional conservative is. I think that if the standard is correct, the one I've kind of laid out, if it's the social issues that you think we differ on, you have to recognize that it's not a matter of like, I mean, sure, like I may have a different preference than you with like abortion.
Ooh, I was just thinking that. I was like, I wasn't thinking about abortion when I said that.
Well, I mean, this would be my case, and I would say, listen, like we might differ on abortion, but at the end of the day, we also agree on like the rule of law. That's one of, I think, back to the Constitution. And so even though like we may disagree on that specific issue, we don't disagree on the process, on who decides that issue. So the thing I think we would unite on is that, well, right now the federal government is deciding this issue for all 50 states. That's obviously unconstitutional and has a lot of problems because now you're alienating 50% of the population either way you go. A better solution, a constitutional solution, I think something we could unite under is to say, listen, let the states figure that out for themselves.
Yeah.
And then, if one guy is from Georgia and another guy's from New York, they might have different views on that, but nevertheless they could come together and say, listen, we don't agree on the actual policy, but we agree on that process of who decides the policy. And I think that's the strongest uniting factor. I think it's basically just federalism. You know, instead of saying I'm socially liberal, socially left, it's like, are you federalist, or do you believe in federalism or not? That's the big key. Do you believe in a superpowered federal government? Definitely not libertarians.
Yeah.
Or do you agree, with the rule of law, the Constitution, that states should decide, people should decide in their own borders, in their own towns, that actually really affect their lives? And I don't see, what are they going to argue with me about? What could they possibly say?
Yeah, I can definitely see the abortion thing. I don't know. Where do you stand? Would you ever? Are you completely not in favor of it at all, or are you first term, second term? How do you feel about it?
I do struggle with this, but I mean, if I'm just being intellectually honest, I mean, I think we all know at this point science is pretty definitive on it. It begins at conception. So I mean that means there's a responsibility component that is involved with this. And then you get these exceptions. I mean, I tend to, let me put it this way. If I were in charge, I were the president, the dictator of America, and I could decide this issue, I wouldn't decide it. I would just say, listen, this is beyond me, because I understand.
It is almost beyond you.
It's beyond me.
Because it's so complex. However, what I would say is, past 3 months is inhumane.
Oh yeah, I mean it's 4 weeks.
This is like, I mean, talking about late term, 8 months, that is outrageous.
Yeah, that's sick.
I mean, that's completely sick. That is really sick. And I think I'd say 3 months is still high, but I don't know. Me personally, I don't agree with it. But as what you believe personally doesn't always apply to the entire world. You can't always, there's certain standards you can't set for everyone. And this is not as black and white as murder or robbery or something like that. It's a little bit more complex.
Well, I guess, if the definition, do you agree that life begins at conception then?
Absolutely. Life definitely begins at conception.
So then, if you wrongfully even if it's a day, isn't that, if you consider that to be life, then isn't the provoked termination of that the same thing as it's taking life, isn't it? If we're just being, for me, this is...
Logically, yes, it is taking life.
It's obviously different because it's not a person. I get it. I get, and this is why I struggle with this. I get, their arguments, oh, well, what if, I don't know, what if someone's raped? Even though it's horrible, I'm not going to base a rule on an exception, because I know that's not, a thing that's happening, at an insane amount. It's a very rare thing. Nevertheless, it happens.
Yeah.
But, again, I do feel for, people. There are reasons that people, good people even are maybe they might be pro-life, and then they, intellectually, and then they find themselves in that situation, and they're terrified. And I get that's, reality, and, I do empathize with that. And so, if I could make the policy across the land, like I said, I wouldn't go either way, because I think politically that's dumb, because you alienate half your people, but just as a, I don't know, just from a human level, I don't want to do that. I don't want to alienate people like that. I want them to decide for themselves what they're going to do, and then when we're all judged before God, that's that way they can't say, oh, that, and that's for me what it comes down to. It's what you have to decide for you what you're going to do. For at least socially.
No, yeah, you got to decide what you're going to do. I don't even like bringing God and the afterlife into this, because we're never we're here. By the time we get there, we're there.
Okay, yeah. So even taking that out, you have to decide for you.
You have to decide. I think one thing that would make me say abortion is not allowed is if, because technically, see, the thing is, kids are so, kids are having, intimate relations at 13, 12, 14. But really, when a girl has when a girl comes of age and a boy comes of age, they need to make a decision. And I think, I don't know how this could work medically, but if there's a safe way so that you can have kids until you want to have kids, and there is, right? There is ways, right?
Stuff right there, yeah.
But you know, there's a lot of people, you know, are a little iffy about birth control. There are side effects, and that is true, right? But it's like there needs to be a rule stating, like, if you're okay with allowing yourself to potentially get pregnant, i.e. not rape or anything other, that's an extenuating circumstance, then you have the responsibility and the duty to follow through.
I mean, I think in an ideal world that would be good. I think a lot of people would think you're a
dictator.
say something like that.
But in reality, it's like, how can you say you're not going to be responsible for your actions?
Well, that's
the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the crux of the issue.
Yeah, how can you say you're not going to be responsible?
Especially with sex, and you can't take it's the idea that there's consequence-free sex is a myth. It is a lie. Whether you're talking about, I mean, it's psychologically. I mean, well, psychologically, you just stop there. I mean, it's like a bond pairing thing. There's something like, when you have multiple partners, I mean, there's a lot of science that talks about that, or I shouldn't call it, social science. That says, hey, like, if you have a lot of partners, like, you kind of lose a piece of yourself, like a piece of your ability to bond with somebody. And that's why, when you look at the data, it shows that people who have been abstinent, and then they, these pretty much the happiest people in the world are these Catholics who don't have sex, they get married, and then they have like 10 kids. Yeah,
because it's that.
I mean, beyond just like the idea of getting pregnant and raising a child and being a parent, which is just being responsible. There's like I said, a bonding component, and you lose some of that, and you can't it loses its value. In a way.
And this is like, I don't know how popular this phrase is now or how many people still say it, but people used to always say there's no love like your first love. I used to hear that all the time. People used to say that all the time. It was very common. At least, my circles. So it's that same thing. And again, going back to just the neurology of it, it is a known fact that there's certain chemicals that release. There's nothing to debate about. So people need to know. And this is one thing I will credit the Democrats on. They are pushing sex education. And that should be something that kids are educated on. Like, that's
like how young,
when they start. I mean, be honest, kids are having sex at like 12. And this is I'm going to say this is across race, across economic background, across anything. I mean, 12 is young. 12 is young.
They're like 15, 16.
15, 16 is average, but there is spectrums.
Yeah, and I remember reading two different things. One, that kids are having sex at younger ages, but two, that they're also having the least amount of sex out of any generation, like by their own reporting.
Oh, so, by their own reporting.
Well, because as opposed to other generations who I guess had different self-reportings, but it makes sense now because like we talked about earlier, the socialization. People aren't really socializing like they used to, and with porn being all of the internet and people just being kind of glued to the internet, they suspect that might have something to do with it.
It's very interesting. I didn't hear about that. But and it's actually kind of surprising because, you see some of these kids now and they're 12 to 30, like they want to be adults so fast, and I think that's kind of what social media promotes is like adulthood's not that far off. It comes like this. But at the same time, it is the development that happens is not something you always see. It's really a lot of mental and emotional and psychological development that really makes you an adult. And so I think it's very interesting. I don't really know the statistics, but to be honest, when you start getting feelings for the opposite sex, you should know about it. And is it the school's responsibility to teach? Maybe not.
Well, now we're gonna, education.
Yeah, this is education.
Who decides?
I don't know who's responsible to teach that. Obviously, it should be the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be.
But
again, this
parents can say anything.
Exactly. Well, this is why I say. I always say that this is why I love being, instead of are you pro this or pro that? No, I'm a federalist. Federalism.
Mm-hmm.
You guys decide. You guys, whatever you think is best. And you know what? Like that way, because I don't want to be responsible for that. Like that's too much for me.
Yeah,
to bear.
the parents need to be responsible for that. Now it shouldn't be allowed in school, but
I just think let it be decided by the parents and the educators. I think they should be in communication with each other. I think, and this goes back to our school voucher idea, where like different schools are going to have different things about this.
Yeah.
And let the parents decide. And I think that's the best way to do it. And you know what? Let the results be the results, and we can adapt, or just remain ignorant and keep hammering away. Just whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Because I think
that's a good idea.
The better policy is going to win at the end of the day. If you're gonna let ideas compete in a free market like that, the better ideas are always going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually a good segue to, we're talking about birth control and libertarians. What about women as a group? Do you think they,
that would have got us in some trouble if she was still in here.
Or maybe she would have joined us.
Yeah, she would. Yeah, she probably would have. What do you mean by that?
So, I'm just going to throw some random numbers out there. I mean, let's say half the country's Republican, half the country's Democrat, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
Let's say at least half of those are women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And among conservatives, all these different groups, what do you think? I mean, right now I'm kind of in unknown territory, but do you think things like abortion and these things are, I don't know, what other issue do women care about?
Abortion, equal
rights.
pay.
Are these things? Well, I think people on the right, or women on the right, probably would agree with us that maybe that's not exactly the case. Given how studies are done, but is that even a group we need to consider? Is that something we kind of need to, I don't know, quote unquote, pander to, or
women?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so I don't even know what I would say. To them,
you see, the thing is,
maybe this is
at the end of it all, women will have more power as society progresses. The reason being is they're better equipped for social situations. And we're entering a world that is much...
I don't know, this might be a bad...
No. It's good, because we're entering a world that is not as... It's not something that we need to physically attack anymore. Not even attack, but it's not necessary to be faster physically anymore. It's not really necessary to survive. It actually is better if you were smarter.
Oh, yeah.
It's better if you were more social. As in the past, that was not the case.
Well, I think now it's not so much being smart and because now we're talking management and those things are definitely important. But
yeah.
I find skills with your hands, things you can actually physically build and repair. And,
I think that age is dying.
I think those are the jobs that people are looking for now. I mean,
yeah, now
the trades are dying for people right now.
You know what's going to happen? They're just going to be replaced by tech, and it's not going to happen like this, but it's going to happen, right? We know it's going to happen. 20.
And this is not to interrupt, but
yeah,
Andrew Yang always talks about automation is going to make people basically jobless. And I'm just thinking to myself, okay, so for all our wants and needs, there's a robot that does that. Is that robot ever going to break down? who's going to fix the robot? Oh, you're going to have another robot fix the robot? Well, and at some point, the human's going to have to repair this thing. So either we all become mechanical engineers, every single one of us, to repair our robots that do everything for us. It's not...
So again, people are going to become more social because that's what's going to be left.
But you don't think, like...
See, if you think about what's 50 years ago was 1970. What did we have in 1970? You know, we had decent cars, you know, bad mileage. No cell phones, anything like that. They had refrigerators and stuff. Probably no microwave, right?
Yeah, I mean, my father didn't have, not a toaster. It had to have been a microwave. This was back in like the late 80s.
That's probably when the microwave started, right?
Well, I remember because he always told me this story. He goes, he got some domestic dispute, and they're going over, man, grab this dirt bag out of this house and whatever. And he just notices, like, this guy, they have no money, they're like squatting this place. This guy has a microwave. And my dad was like, I didn't even have a microwave. I couldn't afford a microwave. This guy had one of these things. Could have been, I'm pretty sure it was a microwave, but.
And just think about all of that, and that happened in 50 years. What do you think is going to happen in the next 50 years?
I think there's going to be more stuff, but it's going to need more input from us.
It's absolutely not, because from 1970, all of the jobs that were taking place, many of those jobs are completely wiped. They've just been shifted.
Well, yeah, it goes from, it's creative destruction, they call it.
Exactly.
And it's you have a whole horse and buggy industry, and that's all gone now. It's like, oh, we lost the jobs. No, this became, now you're an auto worker now. Now you're on an assembly line. I mean, the guys used to make CDs and CD players. That whole industry is now you have to go work for iTunes or something. Now you're in digital music.
Exactly.
So it's like, it's just the markets change and they shift. So it's not like those jobs die. They just get replaced by other stuff.
They get replaced by other stuff until they don't need to be replaced by other stuff.
I think you'll see less jobs. Take for example, like a McDonald's. If that becomes fully automated, who's at the McDonald's now? You have a manager and you have some employees. If you have a machine there, you're only going to need one guy to maintain that thing. He's going to have to lube stuff and fix stuff and program new stuff when they have changes or whatever. So maybe the volume of jobs will go away and the type of job will go away.
I mean, but we're talking about exponentially.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, a slight layoff. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of jobs just not existing.
I could see that.
And not just not existing, but not even transitioning. I think that's the concern, because technology allowed us to transition into other things because there were more opportunities. Of course, with technology, there's going to be space exploration, so there are going to be other avenues. Don't get me wrong. But the basic labor-driven tasks they're eventually going to be wiped out for the majority of people.
Interesting.
I just think so personally. I just think there's just no way to stop technology, and there's no way to make something as efficient as a machine. You really can't beat its efficiency. It's just ability to continue to do something again and again perfect. Now, of course, with creative inputs and other things like that, they're not going to be able to compete, at least at the level they're at now. Maybe. I don't know how far they've advanced their technology, and who's really going to know? Who really knows? But, I think, I'm very dark about the future when it comes to automation and robots. I really am.
Just tie that back into women.
Women. I don't even know how we got where we got.
I think you were probably saying.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about socially.
Yeah, so women will be able to.
Yeah, women will be able to navigate the job marketplace, the world marketplace.
You don't think they already can do that? Well, they, not in labor,
exactly.
not in certain markets. Like they're not gonna, you don't see a lot of, I don't know, stonemason chicks.
That's what I'm
or,
saying.
like, construction chicks.
That stuff is like it's gonna happen for maybe a few more decades, but eventually, gone. And think about the power of that position. Like, let's not even talk about just a position, because think about the power of that position. Being a stonemason, you do your own thing, work with your hands. But how much power do you have to exert or make any changes on the world around you? You don't have any. You just build. Whatever somebody gives you a contract to do, you build.
I think that's meaningful. I mean,
it is.
You can.
It's no. It's definitely personally
But like, if you look at the lifetime of like a career mason, I mean,
yeah,
you could look around and be like, that guy, over a course of a lifetime, well, he could have built, the stone courtyards for an entire town. That's pretty meaningful.
I'm not even talking about meaningful. Like, you can be a janitor and have a completely meaningful life, and you can be super. I've seen videos where people throw super parties for their janitor when they're retiring because he was so great, so helpful. Mm-hmm. No doubt about that. But at the end of the day, you take orders, you have a boss. Mm-hmm. And that boss is, say, the Board of Education. Who's gonna who's gonna run that?
Like, the individual stonemason doesn't have a lot to say as like a mayor would, or like a
exactly. So who's gonna occupy these positions of actual power?
You want women?
No, I'm saying it's
no. You don't want women? I'm just kidding.
I'm saying it's just likely. I think just based on, and this is because I work at one of those like. One of those corporations where it's transitioning. We're not transitioning, but they're new age, just the Google, Facebook centric setup of how everything is. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's an environment that suits women more, not aggressive, not confrontational, all smiles. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
you can't do what you. It's not like when you think of an office situation. Say you think of Mad Men. You think of the way it is, and that's a little bit more drastic.
Yes. Yep.
But at the same time, I guarantee if you were to think of if there was a show, I don't know if there's a show or a movie depicting like a female office or something of that nature, I guarantee it would align with the offices of today.
You know what I'm thinking? It's just dawned on me that we have two men talking
about
what women might want in politics, and I'm realizing I think that's the problem right there.
Yeah,
I think we need to have women here to discuss that.
Because I have no idea on what they want or what they hope to do. All I know is that that's just something that they just seem better at. Like, I don't know what you did at recess, but I remember at recess, the guys played sports. We did something active, but the girls socialized. And their activities of bonding were particularly social.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there are differences.
There are differences.
Yeah.
There are differences in. And males had their time to dominate society. I just think we're in for a transition.
Well, I think I guess for like political purposes, I guess I would want to know, as women who might, you hear some women they're more right leaning, but they don't like, Trump's mean. He's mean. Like,
you see what I mean?
Like, so what? So it's like, all right, what do you want? You like the policy, but you would rather vote for a guy who is more, I don't know, like,
who's nice.
Well, like, what does nice mean? Does it mean he's like he cowers to like media, or is he like just confident in himself? He's not like, it's like that fine kind of balance between like being too cocky being cocky and confident. Like, there's a difference there, and it's like,
see, guys can tell that difference, but and a lot of people say. No, I hear this from guys who are like, Trump. Guys don't say Trump is like too mean.
I think Trump is hilarious.
And you know what they say? They'll say Trump should tone it down on the media.
Yes.
They don't say it's a completely different context. And that's what I mean, is that it may be the same thing happening, but the way we're interpreting it is different. And what interpretation of reality is going to stick? Because at the end of the day, what's happened throughout history is a group, whatever group that is, has an interpretation, whether it's the Catholic Church, they think, they thought the rest of the world should be converted. And they went and conquered the whole world. You know what I mean? And so as technology bridges the gap and we're able to access anything, go anywhere, and it's going to happen faster and quicker, we're going to, like you say, go into a groupthink. And from that position of being in groupthink, what perspective or what ideologies are going to dictate our future? And I think they're just more likely to end up as a feminine point of view. It's just
Interesting.
I don't know.
Because I don't think, just because there isn't now a job, let's say, that men will get to exert kind of their physicality about things, I don't think that's going to change their nature at all. I think
No, it's not.
if you get rid of, let's say there's no more stonemasons, we have robots that do that, whatever. Whatever is next, whether it's an office or whether now you're like an engineer that goes and fixes these or whatever it is now, you still have you still have male aggression. Whether this guy has an office, a group of guys he works with, he's still going to be that man. He's still going to be that guy.
And that's what's happening in the world, is that men who've been suppressed from just their nature are lashing out against the world.
Yeah, well, it's
It's an issue. That's what I'm saying.
We're getting into
confused.
toxic masculinity now.
But it's not toxic masculinity. It is.
Well, the issue, you're right.
It's. And again, my
It's the
point.
issue,
My point is that's what people are saying, and it's becoming natural for people to say toxic masculinity.
Well, I just say it because people know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
But I just, when someone says toxic masculinity to me, I just hear like normal dude, like regular guy.
That's what you hear.
Yeah.
20, 30 years from now, that's not what your kids are going to hear.
Oh, it'll be so.
No, they're going to, when people say toxic masculinity, they're going to think, you're thinking a normal guy, they're thinking a guy who's really toxic and unnatural.
Like a predator, like an evil
exactly.
person.
But it's really just instinct. And just the fact that you even have to say toxic masculinity means you're already conforming.
Well, yeah. I don't agree with the term. I use it just for.
No, you have to use
gap.
it though.
It's part of the conversation. So
Exactly.
But I don't think. See, the thing is, I think even 30 or 40 years from now, I think men are still going to be aggressive, and I think they'll be able to kind of see through that kind of talking point. Like, you can't change evolutionary biology. It is what it is. They can change. They can have the term. We can talk about toxic masculinity. Little boys are always going to want to be, for the most part, masculine, aggressive, fighting each other, punching stuff. I don't see that ever, unless you you're going to have to continually generation after generation.
Exactly.
Right?
That's my point.
But I think you're going to be fighting a losing battle because you can't change. It's like, that'd be like saying like, hey, if we just like generation after generation hammer people and saying, you know what, you better like women, that every boy will just love women. And I don't think that's the case. I think some little guys, whatever, they grow up and they like other men. They just instinctively do. Or however that works. We can't. I don't know.
But that's my exact point. So in a society, say you lived in, I forget what country it is. I don't know if it's like, say you live in Congo, and you were gay. There's going to be hostility towards you.
Yeah, you better not talk about that.
Exactly. But that's what's going to happen on the other end, because people.
But the point is, it didn't go away though. Like, you still had gay people.
Exactly.
Just because society says, well, we don't want gay people, doesn't mean biology goes.
But think about it. Statistically speaking, we really don't know. We don't know how many. And I think I always thought this would be a good test. If people are born gay, and I don't have an answer for this. I really can't say. If people are born gay, what is the statistics? How many per person would, like, what are the numbers?
I mean, I've heard as high as 10%. I've heard 1%.
Was it 10% or 1%, right? So that's a good thing. How many males, how many men are men?
All of them.
All of them, right? But how many men possess that sort of instinctual aggression?
Well, I guess now,
It's not even aggression. I wouldn't even say it.
Well, it's masculinity.
Yeah.
Versus, like, you can be a man but have a lot of feminine features. So
That's
there's a
true.
difference between like biological hard, like XY, XX, male, female. But then there's a realm of masculinity, which are your traits, like your aggressiveness. You're willing to take risks. You like to fight. Whatever it is. And there's femininity. You tend to be more caring and nurturing and concerned and cautious.
Yeah, Peterson talks about this, like
and,
agreeableness and disagreeableness.
Yes, and Jordan Peterson's a great example. I mean, he is fully man, but he has a lot of feminine characteristics.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Is so, in a society like that, what would have happened to Jordan Peterson?
I mean,
Like, what would happen to Jordan Peterson if his mother was Angelina Jolie? And she raised him in that way to suppress something like that.
If he was raised like a... Well,
or maybe when he did something that was like a little aggressive, she said that was bad. You're not supposed to do that. And this and that. And continued to say it time and time again. What would he have turned out? And if he would have turned out differently, then there's a major issue. Because that shows that you can change an instinct.
Well, you could hammer you could hammer anything out of people, I think, for the most part.
Well, gay people don't believe that. They say no matter what, like, you can try to suppress it,
Well, it's interesting, then you got guys who go to prison. I mean, the most manly men of all, who are, and, they go in heterosexual, and it's very common for them to have homosexual experiences in prison. So it's like,
Well, it's multifaceted. If somebody goes in straight, and for some reason in jail they realize they like guys, different.
I don't know if that's
different.
it. I think they come out and they say, "Oh no, it's so straight," but whatever. It was jail and whatever.
Well, that's
why it's so.
Humans are animals, so it's a little bit differently when you're talking about pleasure. Like, people do anything for pleasure, But I'm talking about from a standpoint of somebody being straight and saying they're straight and realizing they're straight, and maybe they were assaulted in jail. A lot of people in jail become raped, and then they are gay after. Then what's?
Well, then that kind of
Then see, then that's opens up a whole new world, because is it a traumatic experience? Is it what shifts?
Now you're talking about what determines sexual.
Exactly. We're definitely in the.
We're in weeds.
We're in weeds right now. I don't know how he got here.
Well, we're talking about women, but
exactly.
I think we'll have to come back to that one, because I actually, we should actually get like other people on here.
Yeah, we need to
get like a chick from. Let's find people around here and be like, hey, listen, are you not offended by stuff? If you're not offended, we will come on this podcast.
Yeah, we need to.
I'd genuinely be, not concerned. I was going to say, but I'd be interested to see what they would say. Although they have to be kind of right-leaning, because if they're left-leaning, they're going to be like, well...
I mean, there's tons of right-leaning girls. We can get the no-toes girl.
Yeah, who?
The no-toes girl? The girl with the no-toes beanie? And she's, like, always...
I never...
Yeah. I think her name is Hillary. I have her on Facebook.
Oh, well...
She wore a beanie during one of Ned Lamont's, toe speeches. And she became a huge icon. I'll message her.
Here?
She comes down. She comes down. I've seen her a few times.
Oh, maybe we'll see if we can get her on.
Yeah, for sure. I'll message her. But it'd be interesting to hear, what her stance is on that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any, besides just kind of these other factions of the paleo-conservatives, the neo-conservatives, I don't even know, I could guess. I don't really know what all these different groups believe in.
You should just bring them all on. I have a libertarian friend. He just switched parties. He was in the RTC. Just switched parties.
Oh, good, awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'm just thinking what are the what's the problem here? I know with I'm trying to think. So with guys like, I mean, to go like to, you know, to the thought leaders, you have the guys like Milo and Ben Shapiro, like they're super enemies for like dumb reasons. Like Milo is an asshole and he like makes fun of his wife and stuff, and like it's just like it's dumb stuff like that. Like you guys both agree that like abortion's bad and the government's bad. And so like come together. But just kind of thinking about it right now as I'm talking, I do see maybe one exception to the rule. Well, I guess no, it's not an exception. I was going to say that it can't just always be also just about like, oh, well, you know, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's actually not the case, I think, because if you have guys like, I don't know, to whatever degree that there are like some kind of like underground white supremacy guys, they're probably like not about Democrats. But that doesn't mean that they're necessarily on the conservative side, because then
who says they weren't Democrats? I think I think what people have forgot is a lot of time the most efficient way to, especially in society with all this information, if you read any strategies on war, and I love books like that, one of the best tactics is to pose as a friend and to subtly destroy something. And this is a natural thing. I've seen girls do it. I've seen men do it. Who they'll and if we're talking about just on a one-to-one basis and not on a group basis, we can do group basis as well. But you infiltrate, pose as a friend, and maybe just give bad advice,
and then destroy them when you win.
Yeah, you just give bad advice, or you know. There's things like that, and it occurs all the time.
I feel like they're like politically, like, so in politics that would look like, hey, I just got endorsed by Richard Spencer, and you know what? He believes in the, you know, he's got the right policy ideas, like, you know, whatever, abortion, minus the other stuff about him not liking black people and whatever. You know, we don't agree, like, but that's the problem then. Is that like, well, if you're running on like, listen, we agree on policies. We don't agree on the policies with those guys. They agree with some of this stuff, and if they vote for us, I mean, that, like, I'm not going to advance any of your garbage crap. But like, if the white supremacist dude is like, hey, I'm pro-life and I'm limited government, I'm like, well, I'm going to do that stuff, but I'm going to do that regardless. But if you're like, but also, I want you to, you know, repeal the 14th Amendment and, you know, give us our separate but equal, I'm like, well, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, but like, obviously, I think even that's the real political third rail. Like, I don't think you want to come near white supremacists whatsoever. And I think, you know, I think that, I mean, it's obvious. I think if you want to have any career in politics,
yeah. I mean, they did the same thing when the I think it was the president of the Ku Klux Klan endorsed Trump. Trump was almost held responsible for that endorsement.
Well, that's ridiculous.
And I think in certain cases, but that's the same thing. Like, what if he really didn't like Trump, and what if somebody put him up to it and they were like, hey, endorse him because you're going to make him look bad? But and there's different scenarios like that, because even if you watch, you know,
but like, why would they do that?
Because it's smart.
Well, like, if I'm the leader of the KKK and I don't like the Democrats, and they go, hey, we'll just give you a bunch of money. We know we're enemies, but we hate Trump. We have money that like you want or something, I guess. Just say you endorse him. Like, why wouldn't you just be like, no, I'm endorsing you guys because I hate you guys and everyone hates me. Like, I don't know.
I'm not saying that's the right.
I'm just saying.
I'm not saying that's the right, but it's certain things like that. I know there was a particular race. I don't even want to go into names, but I know one candidate was running for mayor, and another political figure who has a bad reputation attached themselves to that candidate, which
hurt that guy,
which hurt that person. So. And it's that same thing. Is that person who has that bad reputation, are they doing it? Do they really want that person to succeed? Or are they planting themselves on that person to bring them down? And that's a tactic in itself. And it's something that's been used across it's all the time. Like, people say the CIA agents, they go into something, they pose as a friend, they wreak havoc.
I've heard this too, actually.
You know, they
it's
wreak
funny.
havoc. And it's the same sort of concept, because there's only so much you can do from the outside. It's a Trojan horse.
It's
Trojan horse. That's what it is.
Yeah.
A Trojan horse.
I mean, if I'm running, like, you know, I mean, who knows if we ever get super big one day and become some kind of thought leader, and people look back on this podcast.
Oh man, that would this
For
would
me,
be what interesting
and I guess I'll
was.
discuss it. But like for me, my initial reaction is, I don't. It's a third rail. I don't want to touch it. I want to. It might be good tactically. I mean, in terms of maybe bringing someone down, but I think there's, anytime you get in bed with that, it's like, there's going to be some kind of payment, a quid pro quo perhaps, and that, while you're doing that, you might take down your enemy, but they'll dig that up at some point, and then they're going to use that against you.
Yeah, maybe, but how long or when does that even occur? Because it's the same thing as this. Okay, say there was 4 people here, right? And we're all good for a little bit. A few months go by, it starts getting a boom. Then one person doesn't like the way it's going, and they don't want to say anything, but they don't want it to work, and they give bad advice, and they start sabotaging. But for a while, that can be undetected, and it works because you don't know anything is wrong. And so I don't even know how we got to this point, but that's probably. Oh yeah, we were talking about if they were racist, they wouldn't be Democrats.
Oh yeah. Well,
that's exactly my point. Is if you put yourself in a position, say you're Ned Lamont, and I'm like, I got a lot of money, I'm doing good for myself. Let me be a Democrat. And say Ned Lamont was racist. I'm going to be a Democrat. I'm going to act like I'm helping these people. But what I'm doing is I'm just creating a bigger divide. I'm creating an environment where you either have to be really rich or you're going to be just above poor. And you'll remove the middle class. And Democrats have that same approach. I think across boards is where maybe now they're starting to attack like mega billionaires and things like that, but it's that same approach where let's tax the middle class. They're either going to get really rich and break through that tax bracket and find a way and loopholes to avoid that and keep their money and continue to make more money. Because as soon as you start making a lot, there was a quote as I was reading, it's like, it's hard to turn, 1 million into 2 million or 10 million into 11 million. But when you have 100 million, for a damn fact you're getting 110 million. So when you have a certain amount of money, it's only natural to make more money. And not to be too scatterbrained here is that certain policies and certain just taxes and everything like that, especially if you're talking about, the minimum wage raise, you put pressure on certain people who necessarily can't afford it and they're just surviving even though they may make a little bit more money. But these really rich people with resources, they can use that and use the situation to grow even more because they just have that much more to expend. And you're putting a situation in which a small business is not going to have to pay $15 minimum wage, paid leave, all of these things which are detrimental to their survival, and these bigger companies are just going to come in and eat up market share because they have the resources for it. So at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're creating a bigger divide. Is you're creating people who could have been business owners, who were once business owners, now are employees, and then you limit their potential from there on. Without ownership, you automatically limit somebody's potential.
You're all about ownership. I know that.
I'm all about ownership because, I mean, without ownership, what do you really have? Like, what if you were renting the clothes? would you be able to move as freely as you are?
No.
Would you be able to like do what you want to do?
It's a lot like Kanye talked about. Like what did he say? This America's for sale, and something like that.
He's right. I didn't hear that, but America is for sale.
Hey, he's like, America's for sale, and we gotta just go get it.
Go get it.
Like
Everything's out there.
Which actually is a great segue into Black Americans, which we kind of talked about a couple of podcasts ago, but I've had some time to think about it and everything.
Nice.
And it's perhaps maybe we should make this a little. Maybe I don't know. Should we get into a little bit, or should we save it for next week? We're about an hour and 15 in.
We're an hour and 15 in. We usually do hour 40, so we can.
I'm trying to keep it in between like an hour and an hour and a half. So if you think we can do this in 15 minutes,
we can
actually let's do it anyway. Let's do it. 'Cause
You want to do it?
Yeah, we can just if we have to continue, we can continue next week.
Yeah. I mean, we've already touched on a lot about it, but we'll see what
So
we go from here.
there's libertarians. I think there's a strong message there. I think kind of with these other conservatives. I guess I have to do more research on it. I have to see like what is this thing between like TPUSA. And,
I think it's a really good idea.
And like really, what are the differences? Is it? I mean, really, from what I could tell from like without looking at specifics, TradCons, traditional conservatives, were like, listen, we want to bring like the Christian values back into like these things. We're seeing a lot of like you have like Rob Smith, and you're seeing like a lot of like it's almost like they're almost upset that they've kind of given up on some of the social issues, which I get that, but I guess my message for them would say kind of like the libertarians. Listen, we have to do this the right way. You guys have to get back to the Constitution, get back to the federalism, basically. Fight for your values that you believe in, but do it at the state level, not at this federal level. That'd be my message for them. For the TPUSA guys, they're having problems with like I think they're getting too establishment. They're getting too like they just got rid of some chick who was like in a picture with like someone who was I guess not cool or something, and so they like got rid of her. And so now it's like, well, do you believe in free speech? Do you believe in like
exactly?
Hey,
it's that duality. It's like you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, you can't say like, oh, we believe in the Constitution, we believe in free speech, but like if you associate with someone who said something we don't like, that wasn't. I mean, as far as I know, it wasn't like it wasn't calling for like the murder of people.
Unless it's something outrageous, like no reason for it.
But even then, it's like, all right, even if it's something ridiculous, like. I'm a free speech absolutist. Like I'd be like, hey, you want to talk about that? Like, if you said something was pretty ridiculous, like, do you want to clarify that? Did you mean that? Like, that's what free speech is about. Like, just the truth, really. Like, what's going on? Do you actually hate these? Oh, you do? Well, I guess we're done here. I mean, like, okay, clarified it. But no, it's like, oh, well, so they're having those problems. I would say, no, get your act together. Free speech is awesome. Like, get back to the Constitution. Women, we're going to talk about women with a woman here, probably. That's probably a better idea. But Black Americans, this is the one that we talked about a couple.
We talked about
for a while.
I was just listening to it earlier.
And I think that really, for me, I think is the most interesting block because I think it's like if Republicans could get like I don't know, I think someone told me 20%. I used to think it was 50%. I don't know. If you can get like that vote. Like the Democrats will never win another election ever again unless they.
There's a huge Hispanic population, which is. We gotta
watch immigration, but assuming immigration, let's say we take care of that, even though that's a whole other issue.
It is.
But like what?
Like I said, there needs to be a spokesperson, and there just needs to be. In order to make a transition like that, and I really want to see, because from 2016 to 2020, it was Blexit's chance to see what they can do. And I really want to see what numbers they bring to the table, because I personally don't think it's a lot. But at the end of the day, if you want like 20% or something like 25%, that's a lot of people. And to get them to switch, they're going to need an individual to switch them. It's just... that's that simple. They're not going to switch because of some good policy they heard. That's never going to happen.
This is the thing that I think I have problems with is that, like, you look at like the HOTEPs, you look at the conscious Black conservatives, and I've talked to some of like a lot of one in particular. And he's probably I think one of the most kind of level-headed, like solid guys on this stuff. And even he said, like, yeah, like if you know, if you can't kind of, oh God, I don't want to misquote him, but you know, basically, like, you kind of have to acknowledge, like, that, you know, being black is like, you know, there's a black experience, and you have to acknowledge it. And if you if you don't start there, nothing else is getting through. Like,
and like it's so true.
And like you said, like, you know, they don't want to hear the colorblind crap. They don't want to, like, you have to acknowledge this first before anything.
That's so funny, because I was at a state central meeting. They had a little party. I forget what day it was. I think it was Tuesday. And I was talking to the chairman, Romano. And he goes on with this colorblind stuff. And I'm just listening. I'm like, I don't want to hear any of that. I don't want to hear, you know, he was talking about how he had a small classroom and he didn't see color and this and that. We're just talking one-on-one. And I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to relate. He's trying to, in his own way, bridge the gap. And I'm not mad at him for that.
Yeah.
And I understand what he's trying to do. And everybody does this in some way or form. But when you somehow think that because of your soul experience as an individual, that you may not judge people on color, that is damn sure not the standard. That's just your experience. And it's the same as my experience. I'm not out here judging people on their color, but it's not the world experience. And we
or at least majority. I think
the majority of the people, it's not.
That's what I'm noticing.
It's not that experience, and so, and I get that, and I understand what he was trying to do in this statement he was trying to make, but at the same time, it just doesn't exist. Like, I don't know if you ever watched This Is Us or anything else, and you see,
I've seen it, yeah.
You've seen the first season. You've seen how just him being black changed the environment. He's smart. He was good, but people still have a different view. And maybe his brother is colorblind. He can say that. Oh, I'm colorblind. I don't, that's not how I see the world. I see everybody as equal. I grew up with him. He's a normal person just like me, just like you. But his friend may not see it that way, may not have that experience. So it's completely and that's what gets me the most is when, smart, and this is across whatever race, white, Chinese, whatever, will, say that colorblind experience, and that's their experience. Like, there's all different types of people who discriminate, and it still is prevalent in society. And it's good for you to not, feel that way, but it's just not. It's not something you can avoid, and even to this date, I still believe it plays a factor. Because there's certain things you just can't unlearn. You can, if you grew up that way, I'm going to say it's pretty hard to unlearn it. You can notice it.
Like, grew up what? Like,
say you grew up
noticing race or something?
Not even that. Like, say you grew up and your parents were like, but they're black.
So, okay.
Just even that. Just say they're black.
Oh wait, that's what they
that's
say?
all. That's all they said.
Okay.
Was like you're saying.
I have black parents. Like,
No. Say you were just in a grocery store. You go in a grocery store, and your parent was like, "Stay away from them."
Well, I mean, yeah.
But say it was so brief. Say he was just at the train station, right? And there was a few. Or say they didn't even say they're black. Say there was two black males right there, right? And maybe they had the trendy urban dress wear, which could have been baggy pants, could have been a big jacket, could have been the hat to the side, right? They're not like gangbangers or anything, but that's just what was fashionable in culture.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to adjust to their culture. Mm-hmm. And say your parents said, don't stand next to them. What are you going to do? you're gonna look at that individual, see. You're gonna make a judgment call as a kid. You're gonna just take in the information. You're gonna say, "Oh, he's black," and you might think it's because his clothes, but that doesn't make sense to you. So what else are you gonna think? And once that's ingrained in your head, you're gonna make decisions based on that. And until you acknowledge that you're even doing that, because some things, like there's so many traits I know you probably have from your parents that you don't even know you have until you're around somebody else who's not used to being in that environment. They're like, oh, you're just like your dad. Or you're just, I know you probably got that before, you're just like your mom.
Yeah.
And you as an individual, you don't think that.
Well, I see it. I mean,
yeah, you see it now because you're pretty self-aware.
I mean, I have I see my, I definitely know, like, when I look at myself, I go, this is where I am with my dad. But, like, I also, like, I definitely have their traits, and then I have, like, kind of my own traits.
Exactly, because you're your own person as well. But you're also self-aware.
Yeah.
But
I try to be self-honest, that's what I say.
Exactly. But for a lot of people, they may not be that in tune.
Are you saying that are you making a case kind of for some degree of unconscious bias?
There's definitely unconscious bias. I know I have biases.
Well, I have biases, but I don't think I'm unconscious about them.
I think we make too many decisions in life to be conscious about all our decisions.
Well, I think where I would challenge that is that, especially with the unconscious bias, as it's understood, like, kind of in the workplace, as it's kind of understood politically, is that, and actually I have a friend of mine who actually experienced, and she was I guess more to the left, but then after this experience, I got a call because I was telling her about this for a long time, and then she just, oh, whatever, I don't care, it's not affecting me, politics, this crap you're talking about doesn't affect me, until it does affect you. And basically, to make a long story short, she had to take this class, and the person was like, well, hey, listen, you're a white woman, so you're racist, you have white privilege. She's like, no, this doesn't apply to me, like, I know who I am. And she's not racist, it's obvious. But this woman was like, no, like, you're a racist, but you don't know you are. She goes, what are you talking about? She goes, oh, we're going to talk about unconscious bias. And that's the case, is that, like, listen, you actually are racist, but you don't know it.
I don't know how those two words even link together, because racism is a feeling of being superior.
I think, it's not, or the other way, it's you view another race as inferior.
Yeah, if you feel somebody's inferior, then you think you're superior to them.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but with a bias, that's like, you can have an unconscious bias to a drink, maybe because of color.
Well,
no, not like.
Though, I mean,
like say you got presented. And maybe it's not even color, but maybe it's like a commercial or some advertising you've seen. So maybe there's 3 sodas here. Say there's a Sprite, Coke, Pepsi. You tell me to choose one, and I
choose the Sprite.
And I choose the Sprite.
Is it because it's a light-colored drink? The other two
were dark? Or because it's green, or because of branding? Like, I don't know. That's a bad example. But
but what I'm saying is, like,
unconscious bias is like this. Say me and you are walking across the street, and I'm following. Say there's a camera behind you, and it's following you walking. And every time you walk, if there's somebody who's a minority who's walking towards you, you move a little to the right, you walk a little faster. And maybe you don't even know you're doing it.
No, what I do is...
That's an unconscious bias.
I'll tell you what I do, and it's so funny you mentioned that, because people have said, like, I'll be in the city or something, and walk in the city, and, like, I try to be, like, situationally aware. It kind of comes from just, like, my views on, like, just always being prepared, this and that, and, it goes into why I do jujitsu, and, just being ready for, like, confrontations, this and that.
Yeah.
And so I'm always, like, looking around, like, I go in an area, and, like, I just, who's around me? Like, what are they doing? And, like, I'll make eye contact with people. Like, it's what I do. Some people, like, if I'm walking, like, hey, let's just cross the street here. Why not we're crossing the street. And people would be like, why did you want to cross the street? Oh, it's because they were... And I go, no, I got bad vibes. That's it. I just got bad vibes, and it's like, I listen to my instincts. You could say, now people have made this case to me,
Yes.
like, hey, that was unconscious bias. But I go, no, because I get bad, like, when I get bad vibes, it's not based on race. It's just like, when I've been in the city, there have been, like, homeless dudes that, like, I was like, nope, I just, and I mean, walk by homeless people every day in the city, but some of them, I'm just like, I'm crossing the street.
Exactly. And that's because...
For me, it's energy.
Yeah, ingrained, even more than that, I would say. Ingrained in you is a certain, like, I forget what show I was watching, but this guy thought he had a superpower in which he can tell if somebody was lying or not. And what they were saying is, you don't have a superpower, you're just able to pick up on little cues subconsciously. And when you pick up on those cues, you interpret them in your mind. And you produce a result that you don't know you're producing through what you've seen. That's an unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Say, I looked at you and I have a thought or a feeling about you. And I hear this all the time, especially when it comes to hiring. People always say, I have a good feeling about this person. Can you, if you can't,
well, did you talk to him on the phone? Did you
exactly, like, what made you have a good feeling? And if you can't necessarily lay out, and this is a very complex topic, but if you can't lay out exactly, or if it's not definable exactly what created that feeling, then maybe it's unconscious, whether it's a bias or not.
Yeah, I would say the closest, because, like, I mean, like you're talking with this guy, it's like he's reading body language, and it's like he's picking up on, like, things, I guess, and just like you said, he's like, oh, well, this guy twitched when he said this, so I think he's lying. Like, that's kind of measurable. That I would say it's conscious effort. He's analyzing. Unconscious is like, at least, for this specific situation that I was talking about, it's like the insinuation was like, oh, you just did that because they're, this black guy. And I was like, no, it's not it at all. Like, I've crossed a street. I've done all sorts of things.
That's not even an unconscious bias, because everything is conscious.
Well, then how can...
unconscious bias, I think, in the way how I see it, is not the fact you're not directly making a decision. You're not saying he's black, I'm going to move over. His color influenced the overall decision. Doesn't mean it's like I always say, like, good and evils is like Valium. Like, you're never going to be 100% good, and you're never going to be 100% bad. But you can be 70% bad and 30% good, or you can be 70% good and 30% bad. You're not going to be 100% racist, but 30% is pretty freaking high. Or not even 30% racist, because maybe that person wouldn't even be considered racist. Maybe,
go ahead, finish.
It's hard to explain.
I just think, what is, like, so if the racism, as we defined it, as, like, if you think someone is inferior to you based on skin color, what does 30% of that look like? I feel like it's either one or the other. Like,
30% would be like, okay,
you're like, only certain black people are inferior
exactly.
to me? But
there is a lot of people like that. No, of course. There's certain people who'll be like, you're just, you're different. That's what they'll say to me. You're educated. You're not like the rest of them.
Oh my God! Is this where, like, people will say, like, you're like.
People say this. This is actually what they say.
I want to tie this in, actually, because observing black Twitter, as I'm one to do, there is this weird thing about, like, light-skinned blacks and dark-skinned blacks.
Oh, there's not a weird thing. This is like
going what you're talking
back
about?
to since the beginning of time. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, like, the way I carry myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's what somebody would say, like, oh, you're not like the rest of them. You're not like a gangster gangbanger. And this is a natural thing for them to say, and in their own mind, it's an okay thing to say because they think it's a compliment.
Oh God.
So, but the light skin thing is completely different.
Right,
like
so
that's
Disregard that.
That's another.
It's another podcast.
That's a black on black issue where it's like every race has it though. It's not just light skin, dark skin. It's like you're Italian and you're from Sicily, or you're from northern Italy and your skin's lighter, or you're from China and your skin's lighter, or you're from Japan and your skin's lighter. It goes across.
Oh, okay.
Goes across cultures.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But like so I guess all right, hold on, I'm trying to remember where we're at. So I guess for me, like it's I don't know, was race a part of that decision that I made that day?
I would say I personally would say it factored in. To me, you cannot, like, I make decisions. Race factors into some of my decisions. It factors into if I'm talking to somebody
that I saw, you would have crossed the street.
If I'm talking to somebody, but again, it's different because it could be something that maybe been uncomfortable for you, but it's very comfortable for me. Just because based on how I grew up, just like, some people grow up and they have family members who are, say, on the complete opposite. So say you have somebody who's a gangster and maybe they're dangerous. Or I don't even know if using gangster and what I'm going to compare it to is like opposite sides of the spectrum. But say you have somebody who's like white trash, per se. You know how they say that, like, black people are like, have the opposite of like gangsters, robbers, that, and it's interesting that they don't say like poverty-stricken white people, but they say white trash. Like what?
Like the inbred, backwards.
Yeah, it's
banjo playing.
Like it's interesting how each culture, kind of picks a name for their own, for the worst of their own culture, and how, and I think
not like misguided or like
anything
unfortunate.
Yeah, they make a distinct,
like a stereotype.
Yeah, a distinct distinction between what they are and what we are, and I think that's very interesting. I think that is another reason why. Just another reason. I believe the words you use to describe something affects behavior. And I would argue even that simple term of saying poverty-stricken white people or white trash encourages success in the ordinary white person. Instead of just giving them a cool name, and idolizing it. But that's besides the point. So what were we talking about? I was talking about just the difference between somebody who's a gangster or white trash. Say you grew up around farmers, or say you it's a perfect example, Confederate flag. Say you grew up around family, Confederate flag, they like it, they think it's cool, whatever. If you see somebody with a Confederate flag, maybe on their shirt, it may not mean anything to you. But say somebody else seen somebody with a Confederate flag,
that means, oh my God.
Yeah, and
the
now
South will rise again.
Yeah, and now you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's that same thing as where when that's the unconscious bias, because you just don't know. You don't know about them, and you're making a decision based on what you see.
I think.
I mean, that's still a little bit. It's so complicated.
No, I think. I get what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying,
here's
though.
The difference. Is that it's not like an unconscious bias, because that, I think, at least how I've been taught what that is, and how I've seen it like in the workplace and in in my other examples in academia and those places. They're saying that, listen, you actually are racist, you just don't know it, and that pisses people off. I think rightfully so. Yeah. What you're talking about is like what you've been talking about is lived experience. Where like one guy's like, oh, Confederate flag, no problem. People, my uncles have it. It means Southern pride. We're cool. We like the South, whatever. Someone else might have been taught, oh, Confederate flag, slavery, people who hate black people. So he's terrified by that thing. This other guy doesn't. He's like, why are you afraid of my shirt? And the guy's like, oh my God, it's a racist. And he's running away. That's just like. That's kind of a culture difference there.
There is a culture difference. Okay.
I don't think it's really an unconscious, because the guy's like,
Okay,
They're
now
a little different, I think.
so you grew up with the person with a little Confederate flag, right? You grew up around that
For
person.
the record, I did not.
You did
but
not.
As an
Yeah.
example,
You did, right?
yes.
And say you were a manager and you were making a hire, and one person was a little bit more relatable because he reminded you of something.
From back home.
Yeah. And the other person didn't. And even though that wasn't the main reason for your decision,
It had an influence on
it
it.
had an influence.
But I don't think that would be unconscious. That would be like,
No,
it'd be great.
but that's something you don't know. Like, there's certain people I like, and then afterwards I'm like, oh.
You were like, if we were working together and we had a boss who was that exact situation, and you go, oh, we're getting a new person? Oh, we could have had this person, this person, this person. Oh, okay. You and I could probably be like, well, it'll probably be this person because he kind of relates to this and that. Like, it wouldn't be, I think it'd be kind of obvious. It wouldn't be like, who's he going to pick? I have no idea.
Yeah, but I mean,
We'd have
that's
a
what
good idea.
that's why companies say culture fit. Are they a culture fit? What does that mean? Are they a culture fit?
It's like community anything, like community policing.
Or,
Like,
yeah.
You gotta look
Okay.
like your community, like, you gotta,
That's a culture fit.
yeah.
But then
yeah.
who's the culture?
Whoever's around you, I guess.
Exactly. and that's see, I think what's wrong now is that certain terms that are actually real terms that actually mean something are being taken way out of control. Like white supremacy. Does white supremacy exist? Yeah. it's only human. It's very simple. If I say this is 1920, all my friends are white because this is just the society we live in. Another generation. We have access to education. Our children went to school together. They went to Stanford. Somebody comes in and they interview for a job. They're from Stanford. They're from not. That's a bias in itself.
Yeah, look,
They'll get the job.
Yeah.
And as you progress just throughout history, you're gonna want to be around people you relate to. Period. So if you're at the top of the totem pole and you're bringing in people who are relatable to you, then that's the monopoly. That's white supremacy. It's really that simple. It's like if back when I was in 8th grade and all my friends were, I mean, I had a bunch of friends. Say they were all Mormon though, and if somebody applied to a job and they were Mormon, I'm like, I'm gonna give them the job first. And then there was a bunch of Mormons at top, and be like, oh, this is like Mormon supremacy here. Well, you guys are, it's the same thing, and I can't say it was necessarily an evil, but it could just be comfort. Sometimes you just want to be comfortable, like you want to feel like good and safe and secure, and you want to have a good conversation, and that's just it's what it is. Like even at my jobs now, there's so many Italians. I don't know if you're Italian. There's so many Italians. There's Italians everywhere, right? And so when they get into these discussions about back home, about Italy, and about the traditions of their family, I can see why they would want that in a work environment. Because they relate, they understand each other at that fundamental level. And I think what people mean by unconscious bias is you may look for that candidate. Say you were hiring.
Okay, so that's
You
a
know what
different
I mean?
definition then. I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? And it's
That's
not consciously, I'm looking to hire a white Italian. But you mean, I want somebody I can relate to. And then
It's like someone comes in the door and it's like, this guy's a great fit.
yeah, this guy's a great fit. Look at
From
this
my
guy.
town in Italy. I mean, are you saying there's anything wrong with that? Or
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
But people like to be with
But-
people who like they have commonalities with.
Exactly my point. The only issue is
What are the commonalities? I would say
if the commonalities are white skin, it's a little bit different.
we would say that's bad.
That's bad.
Well, I guess
But when you fine tune it, that's really what it is. That's really what occurred. And that's what I believe what occurred. I don't believe people were like, oh, I'm not going to hire anybody because they're white. Oh, this guy's Italian. I'm going to get him in. Oh, this guy's Irish. We've been through a lot. Like, we had our struggles. Like, I want him to work. I want to work with him because we relate. And the issue comes into play is that quote unquote white Americans have had access to more opportunity for a longer period of time, so they're more established. And since they entered this era more established, they're better suited for growth. That's all it is. That's all white supremacy is they've did a great job of conquering and building this land and set their cultures individually, because Italians came in and they set a culture up. They didn't come in and have it handed out, and neither did the Irish. There was a few people who paved the way, whether it's the Teamsters or other stuff, for other people to grow, and they used that to build. And I think that's the same thing that's happening in the black community, and it's the same thing that's happening in the Spanish community. You look at the Spanish restaurants, they're all Spanish people hiring. Is that racist? Or they're doing a culturally fit thing?
I mean, for me, if you're asking me personally, I'd say hire whoever. Well,
You say hire whoever you want.
well, hire who's qualified, A, and B, yeah, hire people you like and who are reliable.
Exactly. And so it's that same thing. It's like, is it really something wrong? Is it something wrong with Hispanics? Say they own McDonald's, or say they own just even Coquito. There's all Spanish people working there. It's Spanish owned. Is that racist? And a lot of people talk about in Bridgeport, Gala Foods. They say, oh, they're racist. They don't hire any black people. It's Spanish owned. They only hire Spanish people to work there. Is it racist?
Well, that's interesting because because they're Spanish, so they might, if it were all white, if it was like a white owner and only like white people, that would be like the end of the world.
Yeah, it would be more racist. And I think people...
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, no, it's very interesting because I would say, through my personal experience in life, Spanish and Hispanic people have definitely come across more racist to me than white people. Period.
You know what's...
In my life.
You know, this is actually I guess it was a subject on Twitter like probably a week ago, or maybe like 2 weeks ago. But it was that like, listen, like, you know, the way they said it is black and brown people, we're not on the same team. And these are all new revelations because I don't.
We're not on.
I don't operate in this world, and so I'm trying to, like, you know, as I'm trying to understand it, like, you know, genuinely, I hope you know that's the vibe I'm giving out. I do my best to I'm trying to understand. Like,
no, it's complex. I can see your mind working and trying to wrap around things.
Because it's just so funny because, like, I genuinely, like, you know, when people talk about the colorblind thing, like, I can understand why now, definitely not more than ever, why people would think that's just, or why that is not an effective way to convince people to, like, join your team and stuff, given that, you know, the stuff I've learned from you and from others, that, you know, you can't reject, like, the lived experience. If that's what they think, like, if they think, like, hey, this has been my lived experience, this is, like, where I'm deriving value from, you can't reject that and expect them to join your team or even listen to listen to what you have to say beyond that. But I gotta say, it is tough because, like, this has been one of my contentions, is that when you let race kind of guide those things, you get a lot of problems. You have a lot of hard questions and a lot of difficulty that comes with that, because I think at the end of the day with it, and I'm still working through this and still struggling with it, but, you know, if you're going to derive value from that, I feel like that's just so hard, because one of the
it's hard both ways, because you can't say to someone to be colorblind if somebody is not treating them colorblind in a colorblind fashion.
And what does that look like? I mean, it's
that same thing. If somebody is judging you based on what somebody who's like, you know, you're white, you're not going to understand where I'm coming from.
I've been told that before.
Exactly, but how does that make you feel?
Inferior. It makes me feel horrible.
Yeah, it makes you feel weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't like it. Ugh.
You know what I mean? But even that happening to you, helps. It doesn't help you, but it puts race to your forefront. So what if that was in a negative fashion? It's like, oh no, you can't play ball here. You're white. Like you got to go.
Yeah, I mean,
Or what if they just didn't let you play and they didn't say anything? They never said it was because you're white, but everybody else played, and
you kind of put two and two together.
you put two and two together. That makes it worse because they didn't say it to you directly, and that's an experience. So even if, say, I talk to you and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to see the world as colorblind. The next time somebody doesn't treat me that way, it's going to set me off. Or you're just going to ignore it and be submissive. Not be submissive, but you're going to
be passive.
You're going to be passive. You're going to submit the way you feel to, to that experience. Which is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of protesting passively. I think if you protest aggressively, or you don't protest at all. That's just my personal feeling towards it.
I like it. But I guess going back to the original, but this is all good stuff because it really is at the heart of the issue. Is like if we want Black Americans to vote for, conservative candidates or even Republicans to be like to for wherever they are now to become Republicans and vote for good people, not just anybody. Obviously, we need principled people, but and given a level playing field like that, all that stuff kind of taken care of. We want Black Americans voting with us and winning elections, getting the policies that we all agree on, and so. But if we have to deal with this issue of race, then we have to deal with it. Much as for someone like me, I don't really want to deal with it, but if I want to get the vote, I have to enter this world. So now here I am. I want to understand it. What's the issue? How do we deal with it? And so what it seems to me is that, it's like you have to acknowledge that it is a thing. It does. People derive value from it. It doesn't matter what you think about it. But that's what they believe. So you have to acknowledge that. But it's also so now if someone who's white who wants to kind of enter this space and see what's going on and maybe kind of find some common ground and commonality, whether it's policies, whether it's common enemies. How do we deal with things like unconscious bias?
I really don't know if there's a way to deal with it per se.
Not deal with it, but
I don't even know if there's a way to untrain it.
I don't know. What you tell me?
I don't know how you would go on to address something like that. I don't know if it can be addressed. I think just as time goes on, you don't. It's hard to express because it's like.
I know this has never. This has never been talked about.
I think everybody has unconscious biases, and I don't know if we should go about untraining them, or if there's even a way to untrain an unconscious bias because it is unconscious. So what are you consciously changing that make it to make the unconscious conscious? So are you consciously telling? See, one thing I hate is telling another somebody would bring you into a room and say you're racist. You need to treat Black people better. And now you have this nice air around you and you try to be super friendly because somebody's Black or somebody's. That's not good. I think that's probably one of the worst things that can happen. So I don't know how it would work. I don't know how a conservative would go. If I was a white conservative and I wanted to win in a Black city, I would be like, listen, I didn't live the same life you lived.
You'd have to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't live the same life you lived. So, I don't know your exact experiences, and I can't go out and say your experiences are going to be any better. But I can say is that, when I look at you, I don't make a decision until I hear you speak or hear what you have to say.
Is that too colorblind-y, though? Here's what I would say.
Colorblind would say, listen,
race doesn't matter.
No, colorblind would say, listen, you have just as much opportunity as me. And even if it's true, there's no reason for you to say it.
Yeah, no.
It just doesn't do anything for anybody.
It really does go back to, it really does center on the messaging.
It's all
And
messaging.
it's relating to people, and it's like, and I do feel a little, because the way I just hearing myself talk about it, it's like I'm trying to pander. No, it's not trying to pander.
You're not trying to pander. You want
trying,
answers.
I want, well, yes, I want answers, and I also want to win.
Yeah.
In my ideal world, here's how, if I could control people, whatever, I would we just smoke them out in the elections, and then we have these discussions. And it's like, whenever it's election time, we go, listen, we may not agree on whatever race and this and that, but we're both going to go to the ballot box. We're going to destroy these communists and socialists and Democrats, or getting them out of power. Then we come back to the table and continue our conversation. That would be like my ideal world. But it seems like we're not going to get...
Yeah, because
we're not going to get there until we resolve these issues.
Because what you got to do is you got to understand that although people attract certain things to race, like affordable housing, good schools, reentry, right? So that is considered a black problem. And it is a black problem. 1 out of 4, African American males end up in prison. So the bias is not the bias, but to gain traction is to understand an issue, and just don't try to push blame on anybody.
Well, don't
try to push, but don't say, "Oh, well, it's your guys' fault in your little communities.
Your culture,
you
black culture,
have the affordable housing, and if you guys are the one who messed it up, I don't go to your affordable housing place and mess it up." This is what conservatives say. I don't go to, I don't go to your neighborhood and mess it up. They don't take care of anything they have. Yada yada yada. But when you create laws in which the majority of lawmakers were white, if you create laws in which affordable housing owners have a minimum standard that they need to operate in to receive such benefits, why wouldn't they operate in a minimum standard? That's what they say when you create a system that is not beneficial. Like back in the 60s, or I think this is Roosevelt, when affordable housing was introduced. It was introduced as a platform to become an owner. That law changed. It was never re-entered when the African American population entered the same cycle that white America was in during the Depression. That opportunity wasn't presented at the right time. Because if they were presented it in the 60s and 70s, then maybe the crack epidemic wouldn't have happened. And the huge drug and gang problems wouldn't have happened, because people would have had the chance to spread out and not be confined to no ownership and just being around a bunch of poor people. If you're like they say, the 5 closest people, or their net worth is going to determine your net worth. So if you're around 5 people on welfare, no job, what's that going to lead you to? And that's just basic thinking. And the majority of people read Think and Grow Rich, or the majority of people know that saying. So if you're creating an environment in which the 5 closest people to you are more than likely going to be in that situation, then that's what they say when it's like a cycle, when you're creating a cycle, and that's another topic in itself. But it's
the economics and socioeconomics of everything.
Exactly. But you're not going to. And if what I'm saying right now would relate, if there was a good group of black people in here, or just even I had talks like this in Bridgeport, going around and talking to people about politics. This is something they will say, and I don't know who they will say it to, but this is stuff they said to me, and this is stuff that I knew as well, but I think there's a different way of going about fixing it. You can try to fix it and say, oh, the government needs to pay for said crimes, or this is what's happened. The reason why this happened is we didn't have a say. Now that we have a say, we can then choose what happens next. Period. There's two ways to look at it. You can choose what happens next, or you can try to make somebody make amends for what happened. And I think that's where I differ from traditional Democrats, and that's what they want. And I think black conservatives, and that's what they want. The middle ground is not saying you're wrong. It's saying there's a better way.
Yes, and that's the way I think what we're trying to figure out. What I'm trying to find.
Exactly. That's the idea. It's not, you're a slave on a plantation. Is
that's just.
I understand why you're upset, and I get it, and there is an issue, but here's the best way to solve it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's
it's that simple.
Yeah, you and you're definitely a part of the group that I would say are like definitely this the smartest, I think, black conservatives out there. So like those are the guys that are on this stuff right now. Like it's not like this like exclusionary kind of like
it's so weird. Like
I think you're on the right track somewhere, and I'm trying to maybe deal with some of my own biases, like, because I am a very, that's been my thing for a long time now. And it's,
everybody's a work in progress.
And this is the thing, it's like, even if after all this concludes, it's like, you know what, I can't really relate to it. It doesn't mean we still can't work together. I mean, here's what I would do.
It doesn't matter to me.
If someone, this has been my whole premise, is that, listen, like, if we agree on like 98% of everything, if we agree 100% on policy, it's like you can believe what you want to believe. That's totally okay with me. I'm not here to tell you that you are wrong, like that your lived experience is not a real thing. I'm not here to do that. Like, we can discuss and have disagreements about maybe why this or why that, whatever. And realistically, we're never going to know one way or the other. I think we can speculate and use statistics, and at some point we get so abstract, and now we have to kind of attribute motives to people that we really don't know. Like, we don't know why that person treated you that way.
Exactly.
Like, it gets so ambiguous, and it's like, if we're going to go so far in the weeds and we agree on all this stuff, and it takes us to that level to disagree, to separate us, it's like, no, I'll just say, listen, like, if that's what you believe, then I'm totally cool with that. Like, I don't fully agree with it, but like, hey, like, you're a good guy, or this, we can still work together. I was gonna say, if like the Republican Party just grabbed me and said, you know what, we're giving you all this money, go be the mayor of Chicago or something like that. You can just figure it all out, or whatever. Maybe not. I don't know. Is Chicago mostly?
Yeah, Chicago's.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure.
Chicago's mostly.
So,
I mean, Detroit's mostly black, but they do have a white mayor. He is a Democrat, though.
So here's
doesn't matter.
Here's what
I know what you mean.
Because my message, like, if I'm running for president, my message is this: like, Constitution, rights. We're giving you back the rights, basically. These are all things that I think, especially among Black Americans, who are typically they have traditional conservative Christian values. Like, that's what I would deliver. And I would just do that, like, as if I'm going like for presidency or something, like, as a wide kind of spectrum. If I'm going for something like, but if I'm trying to get like the black vote, I'm going to say, like, listen. And I think you said it perfectly. Like, listen, I have not lived the life that you have lived. I grew up different than you, and there were probably experiences in my life that were attributed to my race. So I'm sorry, I cannot relate to the life that you lived. And
don't say you're sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm sorry I didn't live that, but here's all I can offer you. Like, if that's a problem, like, if that's a reason that you can't connect with me, then, like,
it is what it is.
It is okay.
That's what it is. It is what it is. If you can't relate to what I want to do for you, that's fine. It's normal,
But it's like, all I can offer you are these sets of policies.
Exactly. This is what I can do.
I'm not here to talk about a plantation. I don't think you're brainwashed. I don't think you're any, like, I'm not about that. All I'm saying is that I think that I'm just for these policies, and I think these policies will be good.
Yeah, I think this will help out the community. I can see this, this doing this for the school, and I can see this improving the education. And I can see this program helping out there.
And also, like, it's like what I like about the broad message is like insert whatever you want before that. Like, yes, strong gun rights, strong free speech, strong Fourth Amendment protections.
Yeah.
And then now I go there and I go, listen, I want high black gun ownership. I want freedom of speech for black Americans, like stronger freedom of speech laws. I want stronger protections from police, which means decriminalization, checking out, just all issues that actually relate to them, as far as I'm concerned, are all things that actually matter also at the constitutional level. Like getting, they're the same thing, the same issues. You're just inserting, like, hey, you guys are having problems with crime or whatever, it's like, gun ownership, let's do that. You're having problems with over criminalization and some things like that. Yes, it's a problem. Let's clean that up. Policies. Things that are concerns in the black community.
And you got to think too. A lot of things in the black community may not go across the whole black community, but there's such a strong group think.
See,
in the black community.
In trouble with saying that?
No, don't. It's an absolute fact. There's a strong groupthink in which certain problems may not even occur in the black community to that individual, but since it's occurring to somebody else who is black. Like, I know a lot of black people who are not on food stamps. None of their family's on food stamps, but that's a super big issue for them because they just culturally, it's so prevalent, and they understand it. Or even police brutality. I've never been brutalized by the police, but it's still a concern of mine.
Yeah. Oh, you don't think my heart pounds or doesn't pound when I get pulled over?
You see what I'm saying?
I sweat. I sweat, man.
I don't sweat at all. I'm not gonna lie. I'm really not nervous around cops.
I grew up around cops, and I get nervous.
No, because
I get nervous.
I grew up around some cops, so I'm not too nervous around them. Like. And don't get me wrong, like, I got pulled over when I was in Stratford for riding a bike. Me and my friend, we got pulled over for riding a bike, and this was in North Stratford, right? And my friend had a BMW bike, and they were giving a shit. And then my friend's like, "Yeah, my dad's a cop. Yeah, he's a detective." And they're like, "Oh, all right. What's his name? I know him.
Have a good day.
You guys shouldn't be riding this late at night. It's not a good look."
Yeah,
that's what they said. You see what I mean?
I know.
That's reality.
Yep. And you know what? It's maybe though, I don't know. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe. I could say the weakest part of my argument, from my perspective, colorblind thing, is that, like you said, I can see that, maybe people would treat you differently by virtue of a race. And let's say, because they didn't like a certain race or whatever, they just had whatever, they heard, they heard some kind of data that said, 50% of crimes committed by black people. So they go, 50%, okay. See a black person. Oh, I'm probably more likely to get attacked by this person because they're black.
Yeah.
Who knows, wherever it comes from.
Yeah.
And it's I can understand that then if that's the case, then that is an experience that, I wouldn't have, or that anyone not black wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that's, so now you could say, okay, that person was discriminated against and they felt that. And it's okay. So that's discrimination based on race. That's part of life for some people of certain colors, depending where they are. But we'd also have to admit that every individual is going to experience discrimination in their life for some reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if it's not going to be race, it's going to be hair color. It's going to be height. It's going to be physical, some kind of physical feature. It's going to be their intellect. How they're doing on their scores in comparison to other kids. And I'm just wondering, so if discrimination is going to happen to you one way or another, how much more value does the racial component have as compared to a hair color or a physical build or
I think this is all just history. Is that being black occurred the most aggression out of any one separate trait throughout history. I don't think there's any other trait that receives such an attack besides being black. I mean, literally, what else?
Well, I think probably it's so.
Even if you talk about
of the spectrum
like
of reasons to be discriminated
just
against black,
women.
is like,
You could be you could be a woman, and people say they have it hard, right? Or or anything like that, like
I get what you're saying.
Irish or yeah, some of them were discriminated against. Some Italians were discriminated against. You can even go as far as like
The way you speak, your accents.
yeah,
I mean,
everything like that. But how many different traits have literally the entire world treated as an enemy? You can think about the entire world had slaves out, usually at one point, and
it's still around today.
exactly still around today. And that's my point, is like there is no other trait that's been so singled out and attacked. And if you have to,
But like slavery didn't start with like, I guess this is where
no,
I guess,
slavery's occurred throughout history.
But yeah, it didn't start in like Africa.
No,
like,
it is.
It was
It's way before that. I mean, they enslaved themselves. The
So I guess,
Hebrews
like,
enslaved themselves. The
in-
Egyptians enslaved themselves.
Yeah, it's like-
but our history, like current history, somebody thought it was a good idea because it worked. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to single out a trait that could be used for this game, which was in itself free labor. At a point, I believe there were also poor English slaves.
Yeah, like I mean,
No, there were
Irish
actual slaves, like, but they transitioned out because that wasn't the fit. And so the idea is again and again, there's so much hostility, and the only thing that you can wrap your mind around is because of race. And that's what's happened in the past. Now, of course, it's a little bit different now, but it's that same thing. It's like, where do you go from there? And I think that's what a lot of people feel. Like, where do you go? How can race not be a factor when race determined your last 300 years or the world's last 200 to 300 years? Mm-hmm. Really, I mean, I think slavery started, like 1400s?
Oh, who knows?
When it becomes so massive, when it becomes like distinctually based on dark skin, right? Mm-hmm. So you think about our entire era is based on racism.
Or at least the racial component.
A racial
makes it distinguished.
Distinguished in that form. And I think that's what people think. It's like, how can it be so prevalent and then all of a sudden be nothing? And I think that's why black people get mad when they say colorblind. It's like, no, you just can't be racist for all those years and do all that just to say, you know what, it don't matter anymore. Like, we're over it.
There's a lot of truth in what you just said there, I think, because we are such a young country.
Yeah.
We don't have it feels like so much has happened, and I feel like we're a million years old, but we are like the youngest country like ever. We don't have a ton of history, and the history we do have, that's what it is. Like, I mean, I'm just trying to think of like Japan. I mean, their history goes back like long time.
So yeah, there's different sections. There's different points about it. I think that's even why, like, I always felt, in my own opinion, that Japan really played off the nukes. Like, they just accepted it as is. They're not really angry about it or anything. I don't know if there is some inner. I don't really see it. I don't see it at all. And I think it's because they have an extensive history.
But like,
and they've gone through so much as a culture, and they have all that to relate to. Black people have no, like, not black people, African Americans don't have any culture except being black in America.
I feel like this is
That is their
I
history.
feel like the Hoteps would be very mad at you right now because they're.
You're going to say your culture is Nigeria? You don't know. You know nothing about that country.
They would say that you have to know African history, and I mean, I don't know. Like, I know Black American history. I'm still studying.
I don't know African history either.
So that's the thing. So they would be like, they have a saying, before you were slaves, you were kings. And so, like, apparently,
They love saying that stuff. It's like, we can't all be kings. There wasn't a bunch of black kings. There was like one, just like any other culture.
I don't know.
And the rest of the people were
this is
peasants.
The times that I've interacted with them, we have a good back and forth. I'm always kind of brought to, like, you have to know, like, African history to know how we were to how we are today. And and again, actually, it's funny because there have been times pointed out to me, and they're kind of like, I didn't really think of it much until now, but yeah, there's not a whole lot taught about, like, African history.
There's what's so funny? I was
Western civilization. So, like, why we're not going to go over, like, Eastern European, like, no, we're kind of, like, focused on the West. So I get that, but, like, it is kind of interesting that, like, there are efforts made, like, even among God, I remember we were doing a kind of a culture class for work one time. And we went over, Puerto Ricans and this and that. And I remember I was because I would always eat lunch with my Black American colleagues.
Yeah.
And they just, they were going, hey, you guys notice what was missing? And I remember being like, well, let's see. Yeah, we hit this and this. And I'm thinking about it in my head. And they're just like, yeah. And I go, oh, my God, wait a minute. We didn't talk about Africa.
And that's, it's so funny. It's weird in that. So I was at the bar and I was talking to my two guys, and they happen to be Republican, they happen to be white, they're a bit older, but they were talking about Italian history, Irish history, and European history.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I have no idea about any African history.
Yeah, me neither.
None. Nothing at all. And that's the issue. Is,
So you only base it on what you like the last 300 years.
Yeah, that's it. That's your culture.
Yeah.
That's your history. And for me, I'm
Like, you don't seem.
I'm a majority Jamaican. I'm not majority, but I'm like half. So there is that culture, but what is that really like? There is a Caribbean culture, and there's definitely something different about that. But say somebody's from Georgia, and farthest they can trace their generation back is slave. After that, it's like you got nothing. Like, so that's your only history, and it's like, even what are you like?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm Irish and German. Mostly Irish.
Exactly. So you probably got some tells, and a little bit about your history. You probably know some Irish history, and maybe even know some German history. I know German history, and I know some Irish history, and I'm neither. So that's just education.
Yeah.
And that's also personal education, because there's times where I research Irish stuff, and I wanted to learn more about just different things, different wars. I even watched movies on it. So you understand. I don't even know if it was Braveheart Irish. I don't know. I watched Braveheart.
Scottish.
It's Scottish.
Yeah, that's what's the difference, honestly? I asked someone this, well, what is the difference
between what, Irish and Scottish?
Yeah, they're like the same thing, except the geography.
The geography is different, and I think something happened where this is what they were talking about as well. Is there's a thin, there's a line that goes across, and Scottish is higher, right? Or is Irish?
Yeah, it's supposed to be northern.
Yeah, it's northern, and that's why they have more people with red hair there, and it goes there's a line that it goes across Europe where people would just have more red hair just based on who conquered. And it's all genetics, but that's but that's the point. Is they know this stuff. And there's tons of countries in Africa, and there's just no records.
I mean, honestly,
there's really no history. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's the other thing.
There's no written records. There's no history. Only people you know about is like Kunta Kinte. is Kunta Kinte even African? Or is he black? Right?
I don't even
know.
Or
There's that rich African king. I don't remember his name. And then there's Hannibal.
Oh, he's black?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I mean, I don't even know
the general. The general.
He was before Rome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
he fought with Rome. He's black.
I don't even know anything about
and that's it in Zulu. That's all you got for black culture.
Oh man, you know what? This week between now and when
you can do some research.
Oh, I'm gonna send a message out to some Hotep people and see what I get.
What's there?
What guide me, and not to like, because what I know what they'll do. They'll say, "Oh, you got to read so and so's reign." I go, no. Give me some of the name of these like African kings from like back in the day. I want to go right to the source. I'll see what they say. We're about 2 hours 20 minutes in.
Yeah,
probably wrap
we should wrap. Once we get talking about race, it's going to be extensive.
Because I feel like it's a really good opportunity. You know what you're talking about with this stuff, and it's really good stuff. It's not. It's real. I mean, it's high level. It's really high level stuff, and I don't know of anyone else talking about this stuff. I think people, especially like, and I get it because I'm from this group. Like the guys who are just talking about ideas, talking about the Constitution, talking about the rule of law and stuff. That's my world. So now, like, I'm in a new world right now, and I'm like, and I want to explore it more. I want to get people on our side. I want to see what it's going to take, and I'm willing to go the mile.
I think you said you're writing a book, right?
Sort of. Yeah.
Sort of.
Just writing.
That's what it's going to take. It's going to take putting these ideas into something tangible, and I think books have always served as one of the best. I'm even thinking about writing one on. I don't even know it would be like a new conservative, like not even a new form of conservatism, but one that touches on different ideas that are being talked about and expressed in maybe this format.
Like messaging.
Yeah, it's really, just so people can...
It's taking good ideas and then making them digestible for people
to
have
understand
different experiences.
Exactly. So people can just understand, this is what I'm about. And maybe there isn't a form of what is my beliefs in regards to being a Republican and being a conservative. And maybe that needs to be out there.
I think it does. I mean, I think that, when I talk to people, it's a good kind of debate discussion strategies. You have to define your terms, because otherwise you're just talking past each other. Like, that's why I always say, like, oh, I'm a conservative, and people, it's amazing to see the responses. You go, oh, you're this, and this. And no, okay, let me clarify. I'm a constitutional conservative. Oh, okay, that clears up a lot of stuff, and now the conversation can continue. And it's like, it's just so interesting to me. Like, I'm really interested by all this stuff, and I'm excited to see that. I'm hopeful that we can make something out of it. That if we could just just by discussing this and writing about it, if we can bridge a gap and find a better message. And I mean, let's say you find something like that, you give that to something like a Blexit, who has like the kind of the reach, they have the following. You get that out. I mean, I think you'll actually start seeing black people show up to Blexit stuff.
You would, but they would have to change
the messaging.
Well, they have to change their complete. It would never happen.
Well, let's say like
they're too far down the rabbit hole.
Sure, they definitely are. But let's just say theoretically.
Theoretically, it would be great.
Let's say like Candace Owens tomorrow tweets out like, in so many words in her own way, I'm done with this Democratic plantation stuff. This was the wrong way to go about it. Like, no, this is my new message now. Like, I don't know what she would say because.
I think that would be one of the. She would set herself up for a run, whatever she chose to run for. Easily.
Like a good thing?
Oh, a good thing. It would be a good thing because you know what? What can somebody say? White conservatives are going to say, "What? They are on the plantation." Wait, what?
Or the white conservatives following her, if she goes, listen, guys, like this isn't effective anymore. You're insulting Black Americans when you say this. We don't want to insult our friends. They're not brainwashed. They're not, all. And they go, oh. And let's see now their tone changes. Now they're saying, oh no, yeah, Black Americans are not brainwashed. They're free thinkers. They're so on and so forth.
I mean, obviously it would obviously work. It just sounds like it would work.
I mean, well, I'm just being honest. Like, would they? I'm trying to think. What opposition would there be then? Would it just be like, well, you used to not think that, so we're still like.
That's what Democrats will say.
You have to really.
That's Democrats always are good for the.
Yeah, they won't forgive your sins.
They won't forgive your sins, but they want forgiveness. But yeah, it's that point. It's like, listen, I may have gone about something wrong. But here's something good.
Yeah.
Here's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned. Here's what I got out of the experience. And I think when you can come to somebody and say, you know what? Don't even say, oh, I made a mistake. Say, I learned something new.
Yes.
I'm not saying I made a mistake for anything. I'm not saying sorry for anything I said. I don't care if this comes back up. It's 15 years later and they're like, the stuff you said about women is completely outrageous. Like, I've learned, and it is what it is. I'm not going to apologize for the person I am now 15 years from now. Did that even make any sense? I'm not going to apologize for anything I did before today.
I think we'll call it quits
Yeah,
there.
that's it.
Otherwise, we'll keep going. But next week, we'll continue this.
Yes.
I think this is interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Until next time.